The silence in the house was so deep it felt like it was crushing me. The kettle was whistling on the stove, but I couldn't even hear it anymore. My hands were trembling. My phone sat on the kitchen table, still on speaker. And the last words I heard echoed through the air like a slap to the face. She's useless. She's old, doesn't help with anything, just gets in the way. We'll finally be able to breathe when she's out of our lives. The voice of my own son. And he wasn't talking to a stranger. He was talking to his wife. The same woman who used to call me Mom so sweetly in front of others. The same one who, just days ago, had asked to borrow my credit card, just to buy some diapers, for the baby that hadn't even been born yet. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a deep, ancient ache, a pain that had been buried for years, now erupting like a broken dam. But what they didn't know is that I was far too tired to beg for love anymore. And when a woman like me, past 60, with nothing left to prove, stops trying to please everyone, the world around her is never the same again. Want to know what happened after my own son called me dead weight? I disappeared. I let them believe the worst. And then I came back, in a way they never saw coming. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that you lost yourself completely, this story is for you. Stay with me until the end. What comes next might just break your heart, and rebuild it, too. My name is Teresa Miller. I'm 63 years old. And for most of my life, I've taken care of everyone but myself. I was a single mother. My husband left when our son, Nathan, was barely 3. He ran off with a 20-something intern, leaving nothing behind but a crumpled letter in my nightstand drawer, and a mountain of debt. It was brutal, but I faced it head-on. I raised Nathan with whatever I could muster, long hours as an elderly caregiver during the day, cleaning houses at night, and baking cakes to order on the weekends. Every dollar, every blister, every sleepless night was to give him what I never had. Safety, good education, and a childhood free of fear. And for a while, it worked. Nathan grew up. He got a scholarship to study engineering, with a little help from my Christmas raffle, where I even sold my mother's fine china to afford his books. When he landed his first job, he cried over the phone. "We made it, Mom. We did it, together." I went to bed smiling that night. Naively. Because I believed that gratitude was forever. But life has a cruel way of correcting your expectations. Over time, Nathan changed. He became distant. Colder. He married Isabel, a polite, beautiful young woman, who never once looked me in the eye for longer than 5 seconds. And soon after the wedding, the request started. "Mom, could you lend us a little money for our first car? We didn't qualify for the apartment loan, could you co-sign? Isabel's pregnant, we'll need a bigger place soon." And how could I say no? I said yes even when my heart was screaming no. Until one day, they claimed they were going through a rough patch, and moved into my house. My modest, cozy home, clean and quiet, with the garden I tended myself, slowly turned into a silent battlefield. Isabel corrected how I burped the baby. Nathan said I was exaggerating my back pain. Little by little, I went from being a mother to an inconvenient guest under my own roof. One afternoon, I came back from the market carrying 2 heavy bags. And I overheard Isabel on the phone. "She's still kicking, but with how forgetful she's getting, it's only a matter of time." The very next day, Nathan handed me brochures for retirement homes. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Just for you to check out, Mom, you know, to plan ahead." But the future they were planning for me didn't include affection, or dignity, or even a place at the table. And that's when everything started to fall apart. But not in the way they expected. Because while they were busy plotting how to erase me from their lives, I was already sketching a new version of mine. It was a gray morning. A pale light filtered through the curtains as I made coffee, the same way I did every day since they'd moved back in. Nathan was still asleep. Isabel, in her bathrobe, was scrolling through her phone on the couch like she owned the place. The radio played softly in the background, an old song, one of those that took me back to when my son still giggled in my lap, his baby teeth just beginning to show. Then I heard the ding from my phone. A notification. An email. Subject: Confirmation of life insurance proposal, Teresa A. Miller. I frowned. I tapped to open it. And what I saw made my blood run cold. A brand new life insurance policy. Under my name. A high-value one. The yearly premium. Paid by Nathan. Beneficiary: Nathan Miller. My hands went numb. I didn't even register the sound of the coffee cup slipping from my grip and shattering on the kitchen floor. Nor Isabel's voice from the living room, feigning concern. "You okay in there, Teresa? Can you clean that up before the baby wakes up?" I forced a reply. "Of course, dear." And walked out, legs shaking, heart pounding against my ribs like a prisoner desperate to escape. At the bank, I confirmed everything. Yes, there had been recent activity involving my account. And yes, my digital signature had been used. Forged. That was the moment it all clicked. The pieces snapped together like a horrifying puzzle. They weren't just smothering me emotionally. They were slowly erasing me. Literally. Isabel had been giving me memory supplements every morning, pills I didn't remember agreeing to. Nathan kept insisting I was forgetting things, blaming it on age. They made me question my own mind. But now, I saw clearly. And in that instant, something inside me, something that had been quiet, obedient, endlessly forgiving, broke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just knew one thing. If I stayed, I wouldn't live to see another spring. So I made a decision. I would disappear. But not like a victim. I would vanish like a woman who finally chose to live. That very night, I waited until the house fell asleep. I took a cloth bag and packed only what mattered. My real documents, the ones they hadn't yet updated for me. A change of clothes, my retirement card, a small gold bracelet that belonged to my mother, and my phone. But before I left, I stepped into the baby's room. He was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the moral rot growing around him. I leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "I hope you grow up to be nothing like your father." Then I gently closed the door and walked away from the home I had once fought so hard to build. I went straight to the bus station. It was still dark. The place smelled of burnt coffee and old tile floors. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. With the last of my benefits, I bought a one-way ticket to the farthest destination I could afford, a small coastal town called Grayhill Beach. I'd never heard of it before, but it felt like the kind of place where a woman like me could disappear, in peace. The ride took 8 hours. Long, silent. Heavy. When I stepped off the bus, the salty air mixed with the heat wrapped around me like a hug, the kind of hug my family had never given me. But it took only a single day for reality to sink in. Starting over alone is as liberating as it is terrifying. Without a permanent address, I couldn't rent a place. The little cash I had barely covered a rundown motel near the highway. So I turned to what I knew, baking. I made cakes, wrapped them in foil, and walked along the beachfront with a makeshift cooler. At first, I sold 1 or 2 a day. Sometimes, none. And on the days when I sold nothing, the weight in my chest was almost unbearable. Then, one of those days, when nothing felt like a punishment, he appeared. I was sitting on the sidewalk, under a worn-out awning, trying to shield my cooler from the rain, when a man approached and offered me an umbrella. "You look more stubborn than this storm." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in weeks. His name was Liam Carter, owner of a small cafe down the street called Blue Shell. He didn't just buy all the cakes I had, he invited me to set up a little table outside his cafe in the mornings. "If it tastes half as good as it smells," he said, "we'll have a line down the block." In the days that followed, I set up a simple stand with my baked goods. Liam offered free coffee to anyone who bought my treats. The community loved it. And my sales skyrocketed. But more than that, Liam didn't ask too many questions. He didn't look at me with pity. He didn't try to fix my life. He just offered me tea in the late afternoons, and he listened. And it was there, between banana loaves and slow-brewed coffee, that I began to remember who I was before I became Nathan's mom. Time seemed to move slower in Grayhill Beach. The sound of waves gently breaking, the steady footsteps of locals walking along the boardwalk, the constant scent of salt and coffee in the air. It was as if everything around me was saying, "You can breathe again." And strangely, that was exactly what I needed. With the money from my sales and Liam's kind support, I was able to rent a small studio behind the cafe. It was simple, peeling paint in the corners, wooden floors that creaked beneath my bare feet. But it had a window. Oh, that window. Every morning, sunlight would pour through it and warm my bed like a golden blanket. Sometimes I'd just stand there, eyes closed, feeling the soft breeze on my face, with nowhere to be and nothing to prove. For the first time in decades, time wasn't devouring me. Little by little, I began finding myself again, hidden in the details. I went back to cooking, but now for pleasure, not obligation. I made spice cakes, buttery cookies, seasonal fruit pies. And when the scent drifted through the cafe, people would come in smiling, like the aroma had pulled their childhood memories straight out of hiding. I started painting again. I found an old watercolor notebook in a used bookstore tucked behind a thrift shop. At first, it was all smudges and scattered shapes. Then came flowers, windows, hands, and finally, a self-portrait, with tired eyes, yes, but alive. Each morning, I walked along the beach with two charming elderly sisters who had both lost their husbands the same winter. Shared grief creates deep bonds, and they laughed with a lightness that defied pain. They taught me how to laugh again, too. To laugh until my cheeks hurt, like I was giving back joy to a body that had forgotten what it felt like. One morning, walking home from the market with bags full of apples, I passed by a shop window. And caught a glimpse of my reflection. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. The woman staring back had loose, slightly silver hair, upright posture, and calm eyes. And for the first time in decades, I liked what I saw. Liam and I started spending more time together. He was quiet, but present. He knew how to sit in silence without making it uncomfortable. He brewed coffee like he was writing poetry. He'd lost his wife to a sudden illness 3 years before. They never had children, but Liam had a natural warmth. Maybe that's why the kids in town called him Uncle Liam. He always had candy in his pocket, a funny story to share, a way of making every child feel seen. He never tried to fix me. Never told me how to process my pain. He just asked, at the end of each day, "How was today?" And listened. All the way to the end of the sentence. Even through the silence that followed. But the past has a cruel way of clawing its way back. And mine was no exception. One cloudy afternoon, I went to the little market in the square to buy fresh lavender to dry and hang in my window. I was choosing a bunch when I heard my name. Not Tess Carter. But, Teresa Miller. My body froze. The world around me went still. I slowly turned. A well-dressed man in sunglasses stood there, holding a leather folder and watching me closely. I'm a private investigator. I was hired by the Miller family. They're concerned about your disappearance. Are you all right, ma'am? My throat tightened. They weren't concerned. They were desperate, because they had lost control of me. For a moment, I considered lying. But then I remembered everything, every silence I swallowed, every humiliation disguised as concern. I took a deep breath. Steady. Tell them I'm doing just fine, I said with a soft smile. And let them know. I have no intention of returning. Not today. Not ever. That night, I told Liam everything. The whole story. From Nathan's emotional abandonment to Isabel's sinister plan. The insurance. The pills. The cold stares. The devastating loneliness of being seen as nothing more than a burden in your own home. He didn't interrupt me once. And when I finished, he took my hands, held them tightly, and said just one thing. You don't have to carry any of this alone anymore. Then he pulled me into a long, unhurried hug. One that held the past, the present, and for the first time, a future. A month later, sitting with Liam under the shade of a flamboyant tree, the idea came to us, one that would change not just my life, but the lives of so many other women, too. We were sipping coffee, talking about how many stories like mine were hidden behind closed doors, carefully edited social media posts, and the illusion of perfect families. I said, how many women live like I did? Not with visible bruises, but with silence, control, invisibility. Liam looked at me with that quiet wisdom of his and said, then let's build something for them. A place where they can learn to exist again. That's how the idea for the House of Strong Hands was born. A simple name, but filled with truth. Because behind every calloused hand that bakes bread, sews clothing, or scrubs a floor, there's a story no one ever bothered to ask about. We rented an old, abandoned warehouse behind the cafe, tall windows, rusted beams, musty walls. It smelled like mold and memory. But it had potential. With the help of volunteers, we spent weeks restoring it. We painted the walls in soft, warm tones. Filled shelves with donated books. Stocked the pantry with basic ingredients and utensils. We built a long table from salvaged wood, strong, imperfect, and beautiful. But the most important thing we put on the walls. Mirrors. Mirrors in every corner, not for vanity, but so that every woman who walked in could learn how to look at herself again. Our first group was small. Just 4 women. Elsa, 72, kicked out by her daughter after signing the house over to her name. Camila, 39, mother of 3, who fled her abusive husband with a backpack and a baby in her arms. Letitia, 51, who had never worked outside the home because her husband didn't allow it. And Nide, 60, who sold lunchboxes at the bus station, but barely knew how to calculate her own earnings. At first, they hardly spoke. They kept their eyes down. They apologized for taking up space. But all it took was 1 week. 1 week of ovens humming, notebooks opening, flour-covered fingers, and quiet conversations in between recipes. And they began to laugh. To share. To remember who they were before years of silence buried them. We taught them how to create menus, track simple finances, calculate costs and profits. But the real ingredient? Belonging. Because every woman, before learning how to sell a cake, needs to first remember how to listen to herself. To say, I like this. I don't want that. That hurt me. This makes me feel alive. And the more they learned, the more I healed, too. There, in that kitchen full of bubbling pots and trembling hands that grew steadier with each passing day, I found a new version of myself. I was no longer Nathan's mother. No longer a shadow of someone else's story. I was Tess Carter, founder of a space where women started over, together. Where the past was honored, but never allowed to dictate what came next. And for the first time, I knew my pain hadn't been in vain. It had become a recipe. A sisterhood. A force. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Liam walked into the community kitchen holding an envelope and wearing a serious look. "This came in the mail. But it's addressed to you, under your old name." I took the envelope carefully. The shaky handwriting was unmistakable. Nathan. Inside was a short, handwritten letter, no greeting, no apology. "We need to talk. Things got out of control. Isabel left. She took the baby. I'm broke, unemployed, and alone. Someone told me you're alive. That you changed your name. I don't know where you are, but, if this somehow reaches you, please meet me. I just want to understand what happened. I just want you back." For a brief second, something squeezed in my chest. But it wasn't love. It was grief. Grief for a mother who had spent decades trying to save a son. Who never wanted to be saved. 2 weeks later, he showed up. Wrinkled suit. Dark circles under his eyes. He stood at the door of the cafe like a ghost that had finally found its way back. And when he saw me, he froze. "Mom?" His voice cracked. I looked up slowly. The entire cafe went silent. Everyone around us felt the weight of the moment. It was too heavy to ignore. I walked toward him. Nathan collapsed. "Why did you disappear? You scared me to death. I thought something had happened to you." "Something did happen," I answered calmly. I finally saw myself clearly. "Mom, I messed up. Isabel, the insurance, I was lost." "No, Nathan. You weren't lost. You were comfortable. And I was your doormat." He dropped to his knees in the middle of the cafe. "Please forgive me. I've changed. I swear. I just need one more chance." Everyone around us, our new friends, colleagues, customers, watched quietly. Not judging. Just witnessing. But inside me, the answer had already been written long ago. Get up. Dignity is the very least you can offer yourself right now. I don't wish you harm, Nathan. But what you did can't be undone. I gave you my whole life. And you tried to kill me in installments, emotionally, financially, spiritually. And when you realized I wasn't dying, you tried to speed up the process. He didn't say a word. He just sat on the floor, sobbing softly. Like a lost child who didn't know how to get home. And so I said, sweetly but firmly. "You lost me. And I found myself. That's what matters now." He never came back. Later, a friend told me he'd tried to rebuild his life in another city. Temp jobs. Fragile relationships. He was never quite the same. And me? I was just getting started. It's been 2 years since I walked away from my old life. 2 years since my own son called me dead weight. 2 years since I vanished, not as an act of cowardice, but as a declaration of freedom. And the most surprising part. In that disappearance, I finally found myself. And I found a great love too. Today, I'm the co-founder of the House of Strong Hands, a space where more than 50 women have come through, each with her own story of pain, but also of rebuilding. We teach cooking, sewing, painting, and listening. Because sometimes, what heals the most is someone looking you in the eyes and saying, "You're not alone." Liam and I now share a home, a simple little cottage with a wooden porch and the smell of fresh coffee every morning. He calls me his favorite storm. And I call him my safe harbor. In the evenings, we sit on the beach with our feet in the water and lightness in our hearts. We talk about life. We laugh at how wildly the world turns. And sometimes, we just sit in silence. Because peace knows how to speak, too. No, I don't have grandchildren on my lap. I'm not part of some perfect, picture-frame family tree. But I have something I waited my whole life to claim. Freedom. The freedom to exist without apology. To stop accepting emotional crumbs. To love myself, and to be loved back, the right way. It's never too late to come home to yourself. You don't need permission to start over. And if they made you believe your value had expired, prove that your story was just beginning. If this story touched your heart in any way, subscribe to her journey and turn on notifications. Every week, we share stories inspired by real women who started from scratch and became giants. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like a burden in someone's life? Have you ever had to disappear just to find yourself again? And if you know a woman who needs to hear this message, share this video with her right now. Because sometimes, the turning of the tide starts with a simple, powerful, enough. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay true to yourself. Always.